You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of sound. A dimension of sight. A dimension of mind.
Mind and intellect, opening and expanding your consciousness.
Sit back and relax. Let's take a little trip into understanding. Understanding ourselves, understanding the universe, and trying to understand some of the dangers that threaten ourselves and threaten humanity, so that we might prevent them from escalating and hurting us.
Our world has gone violent. More and more aggression. Greed, anger, arrogance, ignorance have made a separation in our society of haves and have-nots. Austerity for the poor, prosperity for the rich. Good education for the rich, minorities get much less. The evil emotions are greed, frustration, fear has replaced love. Greed has replaced honor. And everyone clings to false beliefs. Some people have protested and fought for a cause. And some of these people are fighting in the streets. And as our friend Henry here says, they're just fighting for entertainment. What a sad situation.
Let's explore a little bit about science, and let's understand how small minds have held back the progress of humanity, and how small minds threaten humanity. As we look at different ideas of the universe, we see that way back in the days where cavemen lived in caves and thought that was the world, and as he came out, he looked around and thought that all that he could see was all that there was. Somebody got up on a hill and looked out over the ocean and thought that there was the end where he couldn't see. Just because he couldn't see past this, he figured that's where the end was. Boats started to leave and go around. We discovered the ideas that there was a world, a planet, not just a two-dimensional process. We found that there was a planet, a three-dimension. And it went on and on. And man has broadened his ideas. And yet, at every level, some small mind has thought that as far as they could see was all that there was. This is not the case. And now that we can look back 13.7 billion years, certain scientists think that that's all there is, because that's all they can see. Whereas the small mind of a child can look back and sit back and relax and say, any number you tell me, I can add one to. Infinity. Small minds can't grasp the concept of infinity, and now we are faced with the progression and the evolution of mankind, coming to terms with this word infinity. As we go into infinitesimal, we get smaller and smaller. Man thought that the atom was the smallest, because that was as small as he could see. And then we found out there's electrons and subatomic particles. And he thought that was the end, because that's all he could see. And then we now find that these subatomic particles are made up of smaller bits, energy, etc. And thereby, infinitesimal. We see infinitesimal in our calculus.
It's as if reality is so connected that when you look at one small part, you can see things about other parts. That the entire whole is contained in the part. And in a sense, you can't divide reality up because we're cutting up a hologram. We can't find where one particle is because it's always a reflection of all particles.
In a hologram, the whole pattern is whole and complete unto itself, and if you were to take any little portion of this whole out and examine it closely, you will see the entire pattern repeating itself again and again and again. Anywhere in this pattern, if we were to change one little aspect on any one of these little holograms, that change would be reflected throughout the
infinitesimal in our calculus. We see the infinity in different ideas. The concept of pi is a number that goes on forever. It's an infinite number. And it's essential to us dealing with our world. Infinity is really a bigger part of our life, and now we must evolve the human mind into accepting it. Anything that you study, you can look and study it infinitely, in infinite detail. You could take the coffee cup that's in front of you and spend the rest of your life studying that coffee cup, looking into perspectives and analysis and in-depth understanding, looking at each atom and molecule. Infinity extends in every direction and into every process, even the infinitesimal. As the small child would say, whatever you show me, we could cut it in half. We could think of half. Now, once we get to the point of looking at this, then we see what we call in geometry, what we call mathematics, a point. A point is something that has no dimensions. It's simply a point. And if we look at the universe of infinity and infinitesimal, we see that this is a point, no dimensions, a point of consciousness, a point where we are. Small minds can't handle these large concepts. Small minds struggle with these type of concepts. Another thing that comes into mind is that in our world, everything we see, there is diversity.
Already in the earliest childhood, a mother recognizes an individuality of her child. And so if you observe carefully, you see the tremendous difference even in very small children. And these peculiarities express themselves in every way. So first, the peculiarities express themselves in all childish activities.
We talk about no two snowflakes are the same. And somebody would respond and say, no two anything are the same. That being the case, what if no two electrons, no two photons are the same? Just because we take a look at the Chinese people and the people would say, oh, they all look the same. But as we get to understand and look and deal with them day by day, we see, no, there's diversity, differences. Every child can be recognized by their mother. This is an example of diversity. And what if that diversity extends into electrons, protons? If that's the case, then we definitely have an uncertainty in our infinite universe. We found that there is mathematically an uncertainty, an indeterminacy principle, preventing us from total knowledge. Everything we can do is only to make a good guess, a better and better guess. But complete knowledge is impossible in an uncertain, indeterminate, infinite universe of consciousness.
When you observe the world, you see people, you see houses, you see the sky, you see tangible objects. But when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies. Yet these fantasies are facts. It is a fact that a man has such and such a fantasy. And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. Or a bridge is built. These houses were all fantasies. Everything you do here, all of the houses, everything was fantasy to begin with. And fantasy has a proper reality. That is not to be forgotten. Fantasy is not nothing. It is, of course, not a tangible object, but it is a fact nevertheless. It is, say, a form of energy. Despite the fact we can't measure it. It is a manifestation of something.
Now we're going to look at the ideas of emotion. As Carl Jung has just told us, the inner world is just as important, just as real. Our dreams are what shape the reality. Everything in our world has occurred at somebody's mind that he then brought it into existence. This inner world, the world of liberty, freedom, these type of what we call abstract nouns, they have existence. Plato told us about the world of forms and how there's a world of an idea, and that we try to bring that idea into this material world, into existence. And the material world is filled with little tiny flaws that try to reflect this world of forms. And this is the world as it is, as Carl Jung has told us. Now, what we need to understand is that in the world that we see now with CSI, crime scene investigations, we're seeing a world of this type of evidence. This is very good, this type of material evidence. However, inside the courtroom, just as much effort, if not more effort, is spent on motive. Not just establishing that somebody had the opportunity, but also the motive. What was the emotional force behind a crime? What were the possibilities? Was there a motive of greed? Was there a motive of anger? The crimes of passion? Was there arrogance, false belief, intolerance, bigotry, judgmentalness of small minds? What was the crime behind this? And sometimes there's a crime of just being ignorant, being stupid. That happens. But we have to understand that this world of the mind exists as a reality. It is a deep part of our law, a deep part of everybody's life. In fact, it is the life. Because if we look at the body, we're going to see that what we are is an electromagnetic shaping of a bunch of electrons that never touch each other. No two atoms touch each other. You cannot touch the chair that you are sitting in. It is held by electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic, quantic, and energetic fields that actually hold you into what you feel as solid, but you are not. All of these electrons that never touch, how many electrons in the human body? Well, if we take all the grains of sand on the planet Earth, take the number of all the grains of sand on the planet Earth, times it by all of the stars in the visible sky, and there are still more electrons in one human body. This incredibly diverse set of energy that we then develop as an energy in our mind. Our consciousness then allows us to understand. And there's consciousness in all things, and consciousness in the entire universe, this infinite, infinitesimal universe is a point of consciousness. And each and every one of us has that concentration of that consciousness that comes into being and develops as we grow older and older. And this allows us to then shape our ideas of who and what we are as we are forced through the process of our nature our genetic world that we come in contact with, and then through the nurture of the behavioral fields that we are shaped. Our parents, our schools, our universities, our society shape us as we educate and become created into more refined, civilized people. We are then shaped through nurture that shapes our original nature. There is a window into this world of the emotions. We see it in lie detectors. We see it in the facial structures. If you watch the TV show Lie to Me, we see a very good example. A universal phenomena, a type of archetypes that affect us. Each emotion produces a different type of structure in the muscles of the human face. This is universal across every form of humanity. So we see that there is a window into this. We do not have complete access, but we can get hints of what's going on.
He's not going to talk.
Oh, it's okay. That's okay. I don't have much faith in words myself. Now, statistically speaking, average person tells 3 lies per 10 minutes conversation. And granted, just regular people. We haven't studied in people who are planning to firebomb a black church. Could skew differently.
We don't have time for this scientist to talk to the guy. We went at him for 4 hours and got nothing.
Now, the FBI knows you want mass casualties. So right now, ATF is searching every inch of the 2 largest black churches in the state. FBI got it wrong. Well, there's a shocker. Not one of those 2 churches. Maybe you want one of the smaller churches. One of the black suburbs.
You know what you're talking about.
Don't respond.
What do you say ATF starts with Southbridge? No, I'm only kidding. We're going to skip that one. They're going to focus on Lawton. You feel good about it? That's it, Lawton. Gone after a church in Lawton.
That accusation has no basis.
What do you mean? You just told me. The ATF found a pipe bomb in the church basement in Lawton an hour later.
DOD friend of mine said this guy's a total nutjob. But he spent like 3 years in the African jungle with some primitive tribes studying their eyebrows.
What's his reaction to my statement? Right now, ATF is searching every inch of the 2 largest black churches in the state. Now, what you just saw there was a brief expression of happiness on his face, which he was trying his best to conceal. It lasted for less than 1/5 of a second as what we call a micro-expression. Now, look at his mouth. The suspect is secretly happy about the locations we are searching, which tells me we have the wrong locations. Now I tell him of our new plan, and...
You know what you're talking about.
Classic one-sided shrug. Translation, I have absolutely no confidence in what I just said. The body contradicts the words. He's lying. Yeah.
When you accuse a suspect and he acts surprised, is there a way to tell if it's real or if he's just trying to look innocent?
Now, that's real surprise. Lasts for less than a second when it comes across the face. But if your suspect is surprised for more than a second, he's faking it. He's lying.
We don't want to presume or assume too much. We don't want to make an ass out of you and me. But we want to understand that we have a window into other people's inner workings. Not an absolutely clear window. Don't be too presumptuous, but we do have the ability to sense and develop and touch others' emotions.
It is the character that is doing it. There is a definite inherited complexity. You see, we are born into a pattern. We are a pattern. We are a structure that is pre-established through the genes. It is a biological order of our mental functioning. As, for instance, our biological or physiological function follows a pattern. Or the behavior of any bird or insect follows a pattern, and that is the same with us. Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human, and no man is born without it.
Carl Jung talked about archetypes. we see that there's a reflection of an instinct, an innate, inborn instinct developed in people that they not only work through their face, through their emotions, but also really help to shape us. And there's certain different ways that we can look at and see how people are. One of them is the care for self and others. This is one of the different ways that people have a place on this scale. From the one side of the complete I don't care about myself, don't care about others, kind of the archetype of the rebellious youth who does tattoos, who does other types of things, the rebellious youth. Then on the other side, we have the care with all my heart, the idea of the caregiver. These are two archetypical images that allow us to then see, and every one of us has a place on this spectrum. We see how Mother Teresa is an example of a caregiver. We see the rebel without a cause. James Dean, rebel without a cause. Or as I like to say, rebel without a clue. And the rebel without a clue, the nun with none, these can never really talk. They're archetypical. So if these two people meet, it's very, very difficult for them to share. And what we're going to find is that people on these spectrums that we're going to discuss, that extremism is where problems come from. People who get too far to one side or the other. It's okay to be a little rebellious, but when you're completely 100% rebellious to everything, then that extremism creates a problem. And even if you are such an incredible caregiver that you forget about yourself, that's not always the best either. Now we have value in life. For some, everything is just money. The idea of the wealthy man, the Scrooge. And money, 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 collect, collect, collect. Power, control, material things. And then on the other side, we have people who value people, sharing, compassion, the ideas of the saint. You see, now these people can't really communicate. They have a varying idea from each other, and this creates a problem. But every one of us has a position on this scale where we are. Some tend to be more material, some tend to be more compassionate, and everybody has a place. And this place that we are, wherever you are, can be shaped and bent a little bit by things that happen to you through your environment. Everybody has this idea of right versus wrong. We have the hero on one side, the outlaw on the other. We have the hero versus the psychopath. Everybody has this polarity, and some people are more in the middle, some people are more to the right, some people are more to the left. This is what happens. Heroes, outlaws. Next, we have loyalty to the tribe. This is a basic instinct that people have, and everybody has some loyalty. And some people try to reject their loyalty. But when they're completely loyal, we have the idea of the fan, the regular guy and the sports fan. Loyal to his tribe, loyal to his group of people. Everybody has some of this instinct, and some have a lot more of it. Now, when loyalty to tribe becomes more important than right or wrong, then we have an extremist case where there can be difficulty. Next, we have the ideas of conservative and liberal. Respect for authority. Now, certain people don't trust any authority whatsoever. These are called liberals. We have the archetype now of the liberal that we have to add to this. On the other side, we have people who trust all authority blindly. Here we have the archetype of the conservative. And between here, we have a polarity, a scale, where everybody has a position they were born into the world with, and then gradually it is nurtured and could possibly change. As the most youth will tend to be a little more liberal, and as they get older, they tend to be a little bit more conservative. And we have these archetypal images of this that help this to understand. But what we do find is that a complete liberal and a complete conservative cannot really communicate. Their positions they cannot really justify to each other because the other one cannot hear them. But we have all of these different ideas of conservative and liberal. Next, we have purity. We have an idea of purity, and certain people have an overextended idea that everything should be pure, the Vestal Virgin, the innocent. And the other side is where purity is really not important. We have the temptress, the exhibitionist, the castrating bitch. Here, purity is not so important. We have these, and everybody has this position that they're born into. Certain children are born to be more exhibitionist, daredevils, and other ones are into more purity. And some people hide and mask. They can actually be an exhibitionist inside and pretend to be pure on the outside. That creates a problem as well. Next, we have the ideas of laughter. Carl Jung called the trickster the guy who thinks that everything is funny and do anything to get a laugh. When I spent a little time with Jim Carrey, when he was doing a TV show with me a long time ago, I found out that he was really, at that time, unable to turn it off. He was the complete idea of a trickster. And if we look at this little tape of Victor Borge, we get an idea of somebody who just is irreverent, who does anything to get a laugh. Very, very interesting.
Where have I seen you? Oh, yes. Wait a minute. Half of this is mine, and okay. Put this way. This is awkward. Middle pedal there.
have the other side, people who are too serious. We have the idea of the ruler, who just is serious and doesn't laugh at anything. In between this, we have this polarity that everybody seems to fall at. Everybody has some sense of humor, and some people just have a lot more of it than others. Next, we have, how do you handle attack? We have the warrior who will stand up and fight for rights. And on the other side, we have the freezers, the deer in the headlights. This is best reflected on the ideas of what happened long ago in our village. The other people would come in to attack our village, and the warriors would pick up the sword and fight. Everybody was encouraged to be a warrior. And then some of them would just freeze. They would freeze. Now the freezers would increase their chance of survival by freezing, not standing up to the enemy, to be taken back as a slave, to be raped and made into a slave, but you would survive. The warrior would increase his chances of survival by fighting. And also he would not be made into a slave, because if he lost, he would lose his life. This basic idea of warriors and freezers extends into today. Now these people can't really talk. The freezers want people to freeze, and the warrior wants to defend people. And what we need to recognize is that we need to stop the urge of trying to make other people like us, and trying to open our hearts and to tolerate other people and their psyches. Next, we have outcome expectations, the idea of a pessimist, an optimist. The glass is empty, the glass is full. The ideas of, we say, the loser, the pessimist, because he's always losing. In his mind, he's always losing because he can never really win. And we have the winner, who always wins. And even when the winner loses, he feels that he won. And even when the loser wins, he feels that he's lost. We have this idea of pessimism and optimism. Half of the population of the planet has enough serotonin genetically, and they tend to be more optimistic. And the other half of the population has not enough serotonin, and they tend to be more pessimistic. We find that there's an inborn instinct to this. We need pessimists to be able to maybe stop us and slow us down and be more cautious. And we also need optimists who are going to make things happen. It takes all kinds, but when one side tries to force their ideas on the other, or if there's an extremism, that's when we get difficulty. Next, we have the ideas of the anima. We have, as Carl Jung said, each and every one of us has both sexes, male and female. Even the most incredible male will have a female side, and it's his own ideas of that femininity which will constitute what attracts him to another member of the opposite sex. Every woman has in mind that basic idea of a concept of what attracts them. In other words, we are attracted to what fulfills us and what we have created in our mental minds. This allows us to make initiation of the mating instinct. And the anima is just an expression of the fact that there's male and female in all of us. Then we have the idea of religion. Here is where people believe in a God, believe in a power, or people who don't believe at all, the atheist. This is not really a scale, because this is only about 1 person in 20 is an atheist, one or even less, 1 person maybe in 50 or 100. That 1 person really doesn't feel any connection to a God consciousness. Of course, we always said there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole, because when the bombs start to drop, everybody finds God. But there are certain people who do have much more religion than others. We find that 1 person out of 20 is a hero, and 1 person out of 20 is a psychopath. This is true for our society pretty much everywhere. As we look, we'll see 1 person in 20 really has the hero idea to step forward and represent what's right. And 1 person out of 20 is not wired to have any compassion. It doesn't see any problem with killing. Doesn't see any problem with murder. That psychopath usually finds his way into prisons. And what makes that psychopath? Well, we're going to talk about that a little later. And now the other 18 out of 20 people, the other 18 out of these 20 people is a follower. And most people will just follow. And they'll follow a hero just as well as they will follow a psychopath. Because oftentimes these 18 people don't really have the ability to know what's right or wrong. They get carried away in other ideas such as loyalty. Now the shadow. And we have the shadow in all of us, the dark side. And as Jung said, if we cannot know our dark side, then we cannot know ourselves. And only through knowing our dark side can we really find and grip who and what we are, and to become better and become more. We need to be able to get in touch with the shadow and learn more about it. And we find that we're often afraid of it, afraid of that dark side. But when we get to know it and let it out, we'll find that almost always it's our friend. It helps us. It doesn't hurt us. However, in the psychopath, the shadow is a problem. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with darkness of other people.
Man cannot stand a meaningless life. We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it. We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied, because we are the origin of all coming evil.
As Carl Jung has told us, the danger is man, the danger is within. Let's understand this danger a little bit more. If we look at the psychopath, this is probably the greatest danger. These are people who kill, and if we elect a psychopath, we have the most dangerous volatile situation. Germany elected a psychopath. America didn't elect Harry S. Truman the first time when he dropped those bombs, but yet he got into the political process out of a deep need, an inferiority complex that made him want more power to satisfy that. That's one of the problems with the psychopath. In our world, we're going to find that 7 to 10% of the people of the world have like a cross preference in different areas, such as the idea of handedness. Most people are right-handed. 7 to 10% of the world is left-handed. Doesn't mean that they're sick. They're just a little different. They have a cross preference. Instead of preferring the right hand, they prefer the left hand. We have the same thing that happens in sexual desire. We have a cross preference. 7 to 10% of the people of the world are born with a cross preference. Not just hetero, but more what we call homosexual, which has different flavors, because a man might want another man, a man might want to be a woman, a man might want to live as a woman or enjoy women's dresses, etc. We have a whole different idea. A woman might want another woman. A woman might want to be a man. We have this cross-preference idea that happens, and we have become intolerant to it. Because of the ideas of the warrior, we wanted everybody in the village to be able to pick up a sword and be a warrior, and there were certain of the boys who just weren't really ready to pick up that sword. So we had to try to stop them. In the Bible, it says that a man should not sleep with another man as if a woman. Take a look at that phrase really carefully, and we'll see that he shouldn't pretend to be a woman, but a man might sleep with another man. And the Bible says nothing about a woman sleeping with another woman, because that's kind of cool, I guess, as we say. Where that was not a threat to our society, because women weren't expected to pick up the swords anyways. But the man, who was more effeminate, was now one less warrior, and the warriors didn't like this. Now, if what we find is who makes the best warriors, we're going to find that the homosexual person has more testosterone and thus a greater sex drive. We found that. At the same period of time, 7 to 10% of the people have this cross-gender homosexual ideation. Only 2% of the world's population live it, leaving 5% of the population to suppress and repress those feelings, and thereby they become very dangerous. Because suppression and repression pushes those feelings down deep, and that latent homosexual, who now struggles with his hormones and struggles with his body, this is the source of most psychopathology. That 5%, or 1 person out of 20, is the psychopath. There's a dramatic overlap of latent homosexuals and psychopaths. We're going to find this as we look. And if one of them get elected, then they can utilize their power and create the potential demise of the human race. Yes, one button might destroy the human race, and that one button might be in the hand of a man who cannot deal with his own inner feelings, his own inner world, and that could create the problem. We're going to have to look at the idea and the danger of the small mind, how the small-minded people stop and don't allow us to explore. We definitely know for an absolute fact that there is psychic phenomena. You only have to have one white crow to prove that white crows exist. And we see many, many examples of how these things, these so-called supernatural items, exist. Turn on the television, you're going to see it every day on Discovery Channel. We see that these things exist, and the small-minded scientist resist it. The same small-minded guy who stood on the hill and said, "The world ends where he can't see." Small-minded people, especially small-minded scientists, who are afraid of ridicule, afraid of humiliation, have created this idea that we do not look into the mind, the powers of the mind.
It is the act of consciousness that actually creates the building block that the universe is made of. I can't imagine a universe that exists without us, because it's the act of us observing the world around us that is creating, allowing us to create as we go in a participatory universe. We may never find the edge of our universe as we're looking to define what this universe looks like. We may never find the smallest particle in the quantum world to see what this stuff is that we're made out of. And the reason is because everywhere we look, everywhere that consciousness explores with the expectation that something will be there, that exploration, that act of looking, observation, is the act that creates something for us to see. That we are actually building this universe as we go.
Consciousness is the programming language of the universe. We are consciousness conductors. That's what we do. That's who we are. Consciousness comes through us. It emanates from us. We are the creators. We are the ones who are targeted on this planet because we are the ones who transmit the reality just like everybody else does. If you switch your brain off and you are sucked into the mainstream media illusion, we must understand that we are being used because we create reality. So if we are manipulated in a certain way, and if we are modulated in a certain way, then our creation becomes not ours but somebody else's.
And what happens if we all do it? Everyone in this room decides to take control of reality. I'm talking about reality. I'm talking about quantum physics. I'm talking about taking control of things from the quantum level up, from the molecular level up, and it works. What I think is we're actually dealing with is some, as I say, some kind of operating system that can be hacked using words.
And yet the powers of the mind are there. We see this in quantum theory, the observer effect. The mind of the observer affects the results of the experiment. We see this in medicine. We have to have the double-blind test because the mind of the researcher can affect the results. You see, we know that there's powers of the mind. We know that in the court, we have to explore the motives. We know these things. And yet small minds stop us from progressing and evolving as a human race. They hinder us. We have to be able to deal with this. We have to be able to deal with the extremists. Of all the different situations we've seen here, extremism is one of the most dangerous. People who have extreme positions. That extremism can prompt them into actions that could end the human race. Intolerance. There's dangers in the intolerance of others. Bigotry, prejudice, bias. All of these things can interfere and represent the possible destruction of the human race, as well as people. People try to resist diversity. They don't understand as they try to make everybody like themselves, and they try to push away people who are not like them. Small minds hate freedom. They want to restrict people. They want to put people into a box. We're going to have to be able to get to the place where we can expand our minds. And great spirits get incredible resistance from mediocre minds. We have to be able to recognize that the dangers to mankind exist within, and that man is the danger. We have to be able to deal with greed, anger, arrogance, small minds, intolerance, and the clinging to false beliefs, the delusion. Certain people cling to false beliefs, and false beliefs are the ones that they cling to most. It is a false belief that synthetic drugs really help the body. They just placate symptoms. To use a synthetic anything is an insult. We have to look at this for our world. We have to also recognize that no child under the age of consent should ever be allowed to smoke. That should not happen. Anybody who facilitates that, who allows it in any shape whatsoever, anybody who allows that must be taken to the law for willful neglect and for reckless endangerment. We must stop this. We must stop our children from becoming addicted. We have to recognize that we need to grow our oil, not dig for it. There's a whole bunch of things that we have to now confront in our delusions and our false beliefs. And we have to be able to look heartily into this. Fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. We need to be able to print money to give to the poor, not just print money to give to the rich. We have to look at all these different things and come to grips with a whole new idea.
We are only deeply unconscious of these facts because we live all by our senses and outside of ourselves. If a man could look into it himself, he would discover it. And when a man discovers it, nowadays he thinks he's crazy. And he may be crazy.
A point is defined in mathematics as a non-dimensional place. No up, no down, nothing. In this infinite, infinitesimal, timeless universe, thereby there is no dimension. And at one level of perception, this universe is thereby a point. I like to call that perception subspace. That there is a subspace connectiveness of the entire universe that pervades and allows everything at one perspective to still be perceived as one point. We are entering into a new age of consciousness, a new vision to open the mind. I want you to think about this now as you've heard us talk about the idea that we are not really material, that we are energy. We've given you proof of that, proof that you learned in 5th grade, that we are made of atoms, and these atoms never really touch. We have energy fields that hold us, and such incredibly, vastly complex energy fields. Thus, our entire world of perception is based on an illusion. Now, set yourself free and understand that the wise man says you can never step into the same stream twice. The stream is always changing, different water. You are always changing. Everything is changing. Everything is evolving. Now, enter into life now and recognize that as you go home, it's a completely different event. Everything is new. Everything is as if a child. And if that makes you uncomfortable, recognize that there's another set of perceptions at a different level where everything's the same. Everything's the same. In fact, you are free to make your interpretation of this reality. We all come into this world as energetic beings that are formed with a type of archetypal instinct. We've talked about some of these archetypal instincts and how everybody has different polarities, and that the problem is extremism. If you get too extreme on one side or the other, and then that extremism makes you judgmental. But in truth, we all have this perception, and we all have the right to develop our perception and to develop our lives, as long as we are not judging others and hurting others. And as long as we are not hurting ourselves, then we have that right to develop a wonderful, fast, complex life. Or a very simple life, whatever you wish to develop. We have to recognize that intolerance has been part of the problem. Now let me make sure that we understand that I'm not pushing acceptance. Tolerance means tolerating. We have to fight against intolerance, and to tolerate intolerance should be criminal.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you. My name is Nick Vujicic, and it's a pleasure to be with you. So I have no limbs, but I have my little chicken drumstick. And, so it's like, you like that? That would be really cool if I could get this and get some techno going like. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. There you go. You like that? Is that cool? Beautiful. But honestly, along the way, you might fall down like this. Ready? Right? Hello! Right. So what do you do when you fall down? Get back up. Everybody knows to get back up, because if I start walking, I'm not going to get anywhere. But I tell you, there are some times in life where you fall down and you feel like you don't have the strength to get back up. Do you think you have hope? Because I tell you, I'm down here, face down, and I have no arms, no legs. It should be impossible for me to get back up, but it's not. You see, I will try 100 times to get up, and if I fail 100 times, If I fail and I give up, do you think that I'm ever going to get up? No. But if I fail, I try again and again and again. But I just want you to know that it's not the end. It matters how you're going to finish. Are you going to finish strong? And you will find that strength to get back up like this.
Deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Beyond measure.
I'm gonna show you how great I am. Last night I cut the light off in my bedroom, hit the switch, was in the bed before the room was dark. I'm gonna show you how great I am. Only last week I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean I make medicine sick. I'm gonna show you how great I am.
This kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew.
I'm gonna show you how great I am. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail. I'm gonna show you how great I am.
It is the character that is doing it. There is a definite inherited complexity. You see, we are born into a pattern. We are a pattern. We are a structure that is pre-established through the genes. It is a biological order of our mental functioning. As for instance, our biological or physiological function follows a pattern. Or the behavior of any bird or insect follows a pattern, and that is the same with us. Man has a certain pattern that makes him specifically human, and no man is born without it.
Solon from ancient Greece once said that it should be a crime to step aside or shirk away from controversy, because it is controversy that allows us to step forward. And this movie has been controversial, proving points of the mind, proving points of energy, proving points of the energetic being and the timeless infinity and infinitesimalness of this holographic universe that is repetitive and repeats and echoes and shares in and on itself. And one of the most profound things that I've ever said is, there's no such thing as noise. It's only information that we don't understand. With that basic concept, we are saying that everything in the entire universe is part of an informational conjoining consciousness, a one point of shared consciousness. And that is what we are. And that is what we need to allow other people to be.
If somebody has been clever enough to see what there is going on in people's mind, in the unconscious mind, would be able to predict it. For instance, I have predicted the Nazi rising in Germany through the observation of my German patients. They had dreams in which the whole thing was anticipated.
Take this journey with me now and open your mind and recognize that you can develop the life that you wish through your gentle archetypal ideas and the polarities, recognizing that as long as you don't force everybody else to be like you, as long as you are tolerating their diversity, then you create that own place for your own powers of the mind, and your own powers of life, and your own life that you choose to live. As long as you choose this, and as long as you are tolerant of others, then this is a wonderful world. This is Desiree Dubounet and Carl Jung signing off, and I hope that you have now got some deep understanding. Our society has had such a short time on this earth. At times of trouble, now's a time for rebirth. The ultra-rich, there's things that they don't want us to know. The powers inside that we need to outgrow. They tell us everything will end in 2012. Today there's a subject into which I must delve. Listen carefully. A message now for you. Here's the truth, what you should do. Now is the time for the powers of the mind to face a future, to save mankind. Focus your thoughts in the mind you can see. Use it to set yourself free. The powers of the mind approach infinity. Focus the mind, be all you can be. We must erase the delusions of the past. Use our minds to help mankind last. Focus the mind, be all you can see. The ultimate power shapes reality. Release the greed, set yourself free. Release the anger, replace it with love. Release the hate, give it a shot. Now is the time for the powers of the mind to face a future, to save mankind. Focus your thoughts in the mind you can see. Use it to set yourself free. The powers of the mind approach infinity. Focus the mind, be all you can be. You must erase the delusions of the past. Use our mind to help mankind last. Focus the mind, be all you can see. Release the greed, set yourself free. Release the anger, replace it with love. Release the hate, give it a shove. The power of the mind shapes reality. Now is the time for the powers of the mind. Face our future to save mankind. Focus your thoughts in the mind you can see. Use your mind to set yourself free. Come with me, set yourself free, shape reality. Now is the time, powers of the mind, face our future to save mankind. Focus your thoughts in the mind you can see. Use it to set yourself free. Now is the time, the powers of the mind. 2012's coming. We need to save this planet. Organize our minds. Use the powers of the mind.